is Heiko Schuss. I'm assistant professor in the Department of Economics of Abdullah University. And my background is on the one hand economics, on the other hand modern Middle Eastern sciences and Islamic studies. Today I want to talk about a complex but very important topic, which is meat and animal products, vegetarianism and alternative proteins in the Muslim world. When we consider meat consumption and meat production, we are nowadays in an industrialized global system where live animals, animal products, but also the food for the animals is produced globally, sent over the oceans and consumed in different areas. And most animals which are used in this way are raised in factory-like buildings in cages and so on. And that has repercussions, consequences. There's advantages. On the one hand, there's a mass production which potentially could feed the whole world without hunger and to relatively modest prices. You might seem that different, but that depends on the income. No? It could be much more costly. On the other hand, there are also large problems building up with an increasing population, increasing wealth of the population. There's an increasing meat consumption, but that's just an example. So also eggs, milk, leather and so on, all is consumed more, and that has negative consequences. So the animal raising sector is, we could say, maybe the second impact sector, besides of course the main one is petrol and coal and so on, energy production, but the second one which influences climate change, so produces greenhouse gases and destroys our planet via increasing temperatures via the greenhouse gases. At the same time, to produce these animals on farms, but also to produce food for these animals, wild forests, primeval forests are cut down, and we lose a lot of natural habitat. So from that side, there are also sinks like carbon dioxide sinks which are vanishing. So there are two sides which are increasing climate change, which are our largest problems in the at the moment. But the same factors also have other negative consequences. By cutting down natural forests and other natural habitats, we are decreasing the wildlife in the world. So biodiversity is going down. And again, that's another problem. So at the moment, through climate change and the destruction of natural habitats, we are in a sphere where, how could you say, like the first time that we have such a catastrophe, not natural made by a comet, but man-made. So that's a catastrophe which is man-made. Therefore also humans have a responsibility for it. Another negative factors are degradation of soil, pollution of groundwater. If you have a mass production of animals, there are a lot of waste which goes into the ground and water. If you're packing these animals in very close spaces, they are getting illnesses, so you have to use massive antibiotics, which again reduces, on the one hand, the quality of the meat or the milk or the eggs, but on the other hand also makes the microbes resistant against antibiotics, which we essentially also don't want. That's another problem. Then the very important point of animal cruelty. Compared to the past, the raising of animals in these cages, in these factories, is just cruel and irresponsible. They are constantly living in unnatural environment, under pain, fear, and so on. that is a large ethical problem. So what could be the solution? Yeah, solution would naturally be reducing the consumption of animal products and even going to vegetarianism or veganism, or I'm also explaining that later, there are at the horizon, technical horizon, also economic horizon, other types of protein which are produced in another way, called alternative proteins like cultured meat and insect proteins, proteins produced with fermentation, and so on and so forth. So a solution is there. It nevertheless doesn't happen in a way that it would be fast and effective. Why is that the case? That has something to do with the economic system, that agricultural producers, especially large producers, are very effective lobbying in different countries. So even to the amount or to the level that these products, which essentially are harmful for the planet, are subsidized in a lot of countries. And obviously they don't like to be criticized or to have alternative substitute products on the markets. Now, what has that to do with the Muslim world? Essentially, you could say, not so much. Why? Because the average consumption in the Muslim world of meat is quite moderate, not very high. So the highest meat consumers are again living in the Western world, and that has something to do with the income. The higher the income, the higher the meat consumption. Now here you can already see that there is also a problem for the Muslim world, because we all want development, we all want to get people out of poverty, and if we are successful in the traditional way with economic growth and the traditional consumption patterns, that would mean that millions and millions of people again consumes more meat, milk, eggs and so on, which again damages more the climate, and that's not sustainable. Essentially that won't happen. Before I said that essentially we have enough food, it's just a problem of distribution. With climate change and also repercussions, also vegetation will change. There might be also droughts which reduce harvests of wheat and so on and so forth. So in the whole line of supplies there might be also really quantitative problems. So that hunger is then not only a distributional problem but maybe also a production problem again. So therefore also for the Muslim world, in as far as we want to defeat hunger for the poor countries and have a sustainable lifestyle for the rich Muslim countries, that is a topic. No? And what can we consider about the position of Islamic law scholars towards meat consumption or other animal products? Well, on the one hand, that is approved, that is traditionally was a lifestyle in the 7th century and is a lifestyle now. And the main question is if the meat is halal. So if the slaughtering process and other parts of the animal raising process is according to traditional Islamic law. But on the other hand, we have also in Islam a very strong stress on compassion with animals. So we might even say that from the monotheistic religions, Islam has here the strongest stress on these points. And there's also a stress on the moderation in consumption. So people shouldn't overfeed, shouldn't overextend luxury. So how can we get both together? Also in the past there were Muslims, but there were a small minority of course, which were living a vegetarian lifestyle, especially in the sense that they wanted to have a modest lifestyle and also affect their psychological and spiritual welfare. And nowadays we have again groups of Muslim vegetarians, which are of course still a very small minority. I guess in most countries it's less than 1%, but which are quite active. And they are mainly arguing via these facts about modern lifestyle and the dangers of modern production for the planet, for the health, and so on. Via these arguments, they are coming to the conclusion that it would be better to have a vegetarian lifestyle or a vegan lifestyle. Obviously, that is somehow in opposition of what most Muslims believe and what also most traditional law scholars will tell. But I guess it is worth to consider such a position. Again, when we are considering our position towards climate change and all the problems I had already explained, there comes a question, what is about responsibility? An economic answer would be that is a prisoner dilemma situation, so which normally leads to everyone doing nothing because they are quite sure that the other ones also are doing nothing. That is not the moral position of monotheistic religions. I'm just now focusing on Islam. So according to Muslim religion, Islam, humans have a trust towards the world in a manner, and they are have a position of a Khalifa, so they should care about the environment, they should care about the plants, they should care about the animals. And if you think about what would people do in the past for nature, not much, no? Maybe protect from some of the overuse of humans. And that is now again our position, irrespective which religion or philosophy you subscribe. And in Islam there is, for example, we could say that it's a fard ain, so an individual responsibility, but with such global challenges like climate change, I guess the concept of fard kifaya would be more appropriate. What is that? That would be an obligation which, in as far as not sufficient people are fulfilling it, so reaching the goal, would be the obligation of everyone. So if not enough people are doing something against climate change, then it's your responsibility to do something about climate change, in short. If enough is done, okay, you might lean back, no? But at the moment, when we are looking around and checking the facts, we are in a very, very problematic situation. So natural habitats are destroyed, humans are suffering. That is very clearly an obligation for everyone, and therefore also Muslims should consider if they are reflecting their lifestyle, how they can do something for animals, for the planet, and also for their fellow human beings via that. So what could be the conclusion? If you don't want to switch to vegetarianism or veganism, then you could at least reduce your intake of animal proteins, or let's say traditionally raised animal proteins. Here I add some information. So at the horizon there are some technical developments, for example the creation of cultured meat. Essentially that is meat which is created in a factory, with cell cultures and so on. That is still discussed between Islamic law scholars, but it seems to be there are possibility to produce these in a halal way. At the moment that's too expensive. There is, they are in the process of scaling it up, scaling the production up. And but in the future that could be a chance for let's say heavy meat eaters, so if you are heavily addicted to meat eating, to try such products. First they will probably come in a very processed way, then later maybe also in a more simpler way. No? And that could be one of the solutions, because these productions are less heavy in producing greenhouse gases, also wasting water, wasting energy, and so on. And of course the whole problem, disaster about animal cruelty essentially finishes. You're taking some cell culture from an animal that could be halal slaughtered, or it could be still alive. There are different opinions among law scholars, and so that is one for all, no? And that's finishing animal cruelty. Yeah, okay, thank you so much for your attention, and see you with another lecturer another time.